Good evening. This is Dr. Curry.
This is Jay Street.
And welcome to The Source. We want to let you know on the front end that our brother Kobe is away fighting for people in Washington, D.C., and he's not able to be with us on today. And we certainly greatly miss him, but we have a whole lot of things that we want to talk about. So you need to stay tuned today as we go through the various things that are on our agenda. Brother Street, first, since it's just us two today, let's talk about this eminent domain, because that is something that is bothering me. I think all too often people are not paying attention. They're not paying attention, and slowly but surely, the people who want to take over these communities are getting them. What is your thoughts on that first?
Well, let's go back to what you said offline. When this whole thing came up, and the fact that if this were any other administration putting forward eminent domain, the response might not have been what it is. But this administration right now doesn't have the trust of the community. And so that's one. There's a lack of trust in the administration. And two, anytime you use the word eminent domain anywhere in the United States, it raises a flag of suspicion, because historically and traditionally, when eminent domain has been used across the country, it's been used to the detriment of communities where there are a predominance of people of color.
Right.
And as the president of NAACP said at the community meeting, it's a land grab. And that's the view, and that perspective, right, wrong, or indifferent, is not going to go away. But residents need to pay attention, because if you're renting, it still impacts you. Because whoever gets the property that you're renting is automatically going to do some things and make it more difficult for you to stay there. If you own property and it's vacant, you better be on your P's and Q's, because there's a good likelihood that if and when something like this comes about, you're going to lose your property.
Right.
And you won't get the value of what it's worth right now, even if they decide to do right by man, God, and country and pay for it.
Right.
So it's a major challenge. It's disenfranchised predominantly black and brown communities throughout the country. And there's no question in my mind, there's still going to be a continued effort on the part of this administration to implement eminent domain. And the fact of the matter is, the mayor, prior to becoming mayor, was adamant about having the ability, having eminent domain in place.
Right.
When former Mayor Williams was state representative, he negotiated what needed to be negotiated to give some latitude to take properties when it was absolutely necessary, but to give the city or anybody else overreaching eminent domain powers, that just didn't come about. And it's my understanding from others that they were told by the mayor in his former capacity that he was going to get eminent domain.
Oh, wow. So he started off by asking Bud Frill, I think it was, to push that legislation. Was it Bud Frill or was it somebody else? Who's down in the state representative now?
Well, Thursday the 30th will be Bud Frill's last day, because he took the place of former Representative Gerald Brady when he resigned.
Right.
But the General Assembly eliminated that seat as a result of redistricting.
Oh, okay.
So he will no longer be state representative, but they have something else in mind for him right now as we speak, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that potential mischief in the next couple weeks.
I know we're talking about eminent domain, but that's the stuff that really bothers me, because certain people, especially if you are of a certain color, if you lose your job, you automatically get another job. We lose our job, we sitting out there asking somebody, can I get a nickel or a dime? That bothers me, but I don't want to go there right now. I want to stick with this eminent domain. I was talking to several people when I was doing my research about, what was the benefits and the lacks, and some of the people who I respect shared with me that the purpose for why the legislation went forward was to make sure that the city had some power in order to deal with some of the blight properties that are in our city. And then as I went further into my research, I found out they have power already to do certain things, but they're too lazy to use the system.
Well, but their view of it, and what their position is that because vacant property owners pay their taxes, they can't take them. Just that simple. That was their position. And so now, what was proposed and what didn't go forward is that even if you've paid your taxes on that vacant property, they can implement eminent domain in the best public interest and take the property.
Well, but they could take it and they're going to give you a fair market value. See, the problem is when people get these.
What is the fair market value?
Well, see, that's what I'm trying to say. If it was really an issue of blighted properties, then that type of language had no business even being in the bill. That shows you that eminent domain was really going to be designed to take people's properties. Why, if it's a nuisance property, if it's a blighted property, if it's a property that is messed up and we want to beautify our community, why is fair market value even in the legislation? I read the bill, and it says they will have the ability to remove properties from individuals who are, I guess, not doing what they need to do, but they will give them a fair market value. That means people can lie and say a person is not doing what they're supposed to do with their property and then take their property from them and give them a fair market value. And like you said, what is a fair market value? Sure, some of the things that they're trying to do, they have increased the value so that certain people won't keep their homes and things of that nature. But that's when I start raising my eyebrows saying something is fishy with this bill.
But the other is the mechanism is not talked about. They have the ability, and when one of the properties that Hilltop owned in previous years was vacant, they didn't have a problem charging me $2,000 a year for that vacant property.
Right.
So you mean to tell me you can't utilize that?
But that's what I'm saying.
If
They do.
If it's a nuisance property, when Beau Biden was Attorney General, he worked very diligently on the legislation that made it okay to be able to take a nuisance property, which was actually a nuisance property. You had to prove it based on crime, based on the things that had transpired. But that's there.
Right.
So I don't understand where in my opinion, there's no void.
Right, but the problem
needs to be
is
filled.
we need properties done right away. We don't know which way elections are going to go. So since I'm in office right now, I need to make sure I can take some properties. Had this bill passed, you would have probably seen a whole lot of properties that have never been deemed as nuisance, that have never been deemed as blighted, probably taken from people because they will have the legal right to do it. But there is a process on the books for the city of Wilmington to be able to take a property if the property owner has neglected their property.
But if you recall, and you said this on this show, that the flyer that was disseminated said that in order for the city to be able to take a property with eminent domain, it had to be approved by the court. And that's not what the legislation said.
I got all the way in there.
You're telling the community one thing, and the actuality is something completely different, and that's just wrong in terms of process and procedure.
But because we don't, but Jay, what you fell in, well, you understand it, and that's why I always argue with our community. When that was brought up, the grave mistake made was they put that on the flyer. So they cannot say that they didn't say that. When I read the legislation, it was nothing in there that talks about illegal, the court has to approve it, which means I can say with my words that your property is blighted, because if your community is the community I'm trying to take from you, then I can just say you did this, you did that, you did the other without any legal course and take your property and give you a fair market value, very low probably. That's why when you said that it wasn't on there, it wasn't on there. And it wasn't supposed to be on there, because how do you get caught up in the courts if you're really trying to do something?
No, but why do you disseminate information that's simply not true?
They do it all the time.
And you know it's not true.
What's wrong with you, Street? You've been around for 100,000 years. They do it all the time.
It's got to be 100,000.
Because you know, they do it all the time because we do not read. We do not read. We trust these $3 politicians that we deal with to have our best interests at heart. And the people say, oh, I was told. Well, I read. I'm an avid reader. So when I saw about the eminent domain, because some things I don't fight about because it looks legit, so I let it go even though it may sound crazy. When I read the legislation, I immediately said, this is not what they're saying.
Okay, but under the proposed legislation, suppose the community center that you built in the last couple of years, suppose for some reason you decide not to have daycare, and that's vacant for a year. Under that legislation, could they come take that property?
It depends on how they worded it. Yeah, they could, because there's nothing legal to stop them. Yes, they could, because there's nothing, because they don't have to go to court. They can just simply say it's an empty building, and it is causing problems. We're getting too many police calls to that building.
Or it's in the public interest.
Yeah, I forgot about that piece. Yeah,
it's in the best public interest.
And especially since my homeless center is in South Bridge, which means it's right at that riverfront.
South Wilmington is going to be.
Yeah, and I want to say this to South Wilmington too.
Wilmington.
I did have an opportunity to meet with the vice president of the Civic Association over here, and I kind of shared with him, we need to stop fighting each other, and we need to start fighting this regentrification that's occurring, because people think that they are safe. But South Bridge will not be South. Well, East Iron Fair will always have its campus, and its campus will be in South Bridge if we're the only thing in South Bridge. But if this community continue that people like Hanifa Shabazz, who is the representative of the folks who ain't did nothing while she was the president of the city council, keep advising them and allowing them to believe and pulling the wool over their eyes, believing that everything is fine, this is not what they're trying to do, that's the problem. Regentrification is real, and they're going to take what they want to take.
But I don't think that those who continue to support all this effort for regentrification understand the long-term impact of this.
They don't.
And if you look at them building Riverfront East now, and the properties, the condominiums in the Riverside that exist, they're renting for $4,000 a month. A month. And you're going to probably have comparable condos down there. Well, as you change that, and people move in and are at a higher economic level,
I know where you're going.
You're at the same time, you're changing the political landscape.
Hallelujah.
of the entire city,
which means the people,
that's intentional.
Right, which means the people who are currently representing will not be able to represent.
And you know, if you continue down that road, then you start the process of eliminating majority-minority districts.
That's right.
And now everybody has a problem.
And
everybody that's supported, those who are not being supported, have a problem. And then you look at the city and its unique attributes. Wilmington, Delaware is the only city in the United States of America that doesn't have control, no authority, no responsibility over its own port.
Wow.
Wilmington, Delaware is the only city in the United States of America which has no responsibility, no authority over the educational destiny of its own children. Wilmington, Delaware is probably the only city in the United States of America which has no newspaper, no television station of its own, no radio station of its own. All those entities have been allowed to move out. Now, if you look at Christiana Care in the hospital when it was built, down across from the racetrack, whatever that's called, in that Christina area, it was built, and city officials, city leaders at the time cried foul, and we lost not one, not two, but 3 hospitals in the city. 2 torn down, one being used now for alternate doctors' offices and those kind of things. And we stood idly by as a community and let all those things transpire. And if you look at the press, the article in the News Journal on Thursday, which came out on its webpage, at least on Thursday, it goes into great detail about the amount of money being spent on the port.
Yeah.
But to whose benefit?
Right.
And they, you know, the port would lease the Gulf Tanner because Gulftainer was going to take it over. Gulftainer had $500 million. They had whatever, and they were going to do all these great things at their expense. And that's not the case at all.
But who's holding them accountable?
Starting with, we're going to take Palmer School, we're going to make it a training center so people can work at the port. And Palmer's a vacant building. Is the city going to come take that?
Yeah, really?
Is the city going to come take that?
Well, yeah,
Are
because
they
it's in South
finding
Bridge.
Gulftainer?
No.
Or what?
No, and I hope somebody
Is
will
that a
refute me.
nuisance property now?
Yes.
Is it overgrown with weeds and trash?
And glass and broken windows and it looks decapitated. Yes.
Right across from a very, very well-established daycare center, neighborhood center.
Yeah.
And a very well-established church.
Yeah. Amen. Called the East Zion Fair. I agree with you 100%. Let me show you this. I was in the supermarket in Bear, Delaware, and I came across a gentleman who used to be in Illinois. He worked down there at the port, and he resigned because it was just too much for even him to stay there. Where are all of the deliveries on the promises that were made to Wilmington?
5,000 jobs.
Where are they?
And I think one of the biggest mistakes we made, which is why I raised it as a city, was to sell the port, lease the port, whatever the heck we did with it with the state. We should have never relinquished control of the port to the state in the first place. And if at the time the state could afford to do the things that need to be done to redevelop the port, they could afford to do it. They could have given the city that money, or the city could have very well bonded it itself. And if Gulftainer for $500 million could put forward a proposal that said we're going to spend this money and make money, we lost control of those jobs.
Under whose administration was that? I can't remember.
Sills.
So it was under Sills when we lost the port.
Sills and Baker agreed to let the state have the port because the view was we couldn't afford it. I was just Parks director. I didn't agree with it, but who was I?
And now today, one of the main resources for our African Americans to make an honest living is literally limited.
And you know, as unions have been busted, and as people have retired or been fired, being replaced by people from Alabama, Mississippi.
Yeah. And when we talk about,
when I suggested that any agreement with Gulftainer should give great flexibility and great preferential treatment to people who already lived in the state, who already lived in the county, who already lived in the city, that couldn't be done in a contract. It could be done in a contract if you put it in a contract and you got people to agree with it.
Yeah, but
I didn't say agree on a racial quota or anything like that. I said preferential treatment for the people who already live here.
Right. Well,
that's not going to happen.
It could have happened, and it did not happen because we cry over the peanuts when in actuality the whole pile is available to us. And that's why I was saying earlier when we were talking about regionification, all of this is a part of that regionification because it's like you're pushing out good jobs, you're causing the poor to become poorer, and even here in South Bridge, it's really interesting how, you know, we got we got Riverside with those very expensive apartments or shall I say condos, and they're pushing back, and it won't be. There's a couple properties around here. Right across the street, there's a property, and that property was listed and sold within a day for a certain amount of money, and the property is vacant. Nothing has happened in that property. And it is a nuisance because we've watched some activity that was illegal going back and forth in there. The owner or whoever's in charge of it constantly boards it up, but no one takes it because you know what they're doing is trying to take piece by piece.
But you don't need to, you make that example. You look at Adams Street, which is condemned, still not boarded up.
Yeah, I drove by the other day and I just saw the sign on the door that you cannot enter or something. I saw signs on the door, but boarded up. No, the answer is absolutely not, especially the windows, because some of the windows were left open. And I saw that. I drove by the other day just so I can just get a look at what's going on. I meant to get a video footage of it so I can show the people that but friendships is why. He has a relationship with the city. He has a relationship with the city leadership. I don't hear city council members jumping up and down saying this is an outright and where are those residents? Now, we're just talking about several things today, but where are those residents right now who were displaced? Still displaced.
And unless they find the wherewithal to obtain long-term property for them to rent on their own, they'll still be.
You know what I wish?
They'll be in the Hope Center. They'll be in the hotels, and basically, they're on their own. I'm
going before our board after I finish. Jay, I will be building this senior housing very shortly, and because I'm so concerned about this regentrification, I'm going to go before our board. And what I want to do is I want us to find the money. Like if we can spend $3 or $4 million to build buildings, why can't we find a couple $1 million to get us some attorneys? And we need some civil rights attorneys in this city to come in from somewhere else so that we can start suing. I never agreed with you on that. I always heard you say, hey, litigation. And you won. You got a very successful track record of litigation. But you know what? Some of the things that's being done to us because they know we don't have the power to stop them.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. But I'm very concerned when you got a United States Supreme Court that's acting the way it's acting.
Yeah.
And when the state came in an effort to lift the federal court order over school desegregation, and to me, the purpose and intention, the spirit and intention of the desegregation order never came to fruition. But when we lost in the Third Circuit, I did not pull the trigger and go to the Supreme Court because we were going to lose 5-4 with the fifth vote being Uncle Clarence. And you laugh, but to me it's never been funny.
Right.
Because school desegregation lawyers from across the country had contacted me. You got to get in touch with Joe. You got to get in touch with Joe. Joe Biden and I have never had a conversation. And when I called his office, the best I could get was the chief of staff. But they knew, the school desegregation lawyers knew based on his record, that he was dangerous. But President chose to listen to Clarence Thomas sitting on TV saying this ain't nothing but a high-tech lynching, and basically told Anita Hill, you don't matter. Now, he loves black women now.
You always start in trouble.
But he wouldn't listen to Anita Hill. Yeah. And she said all the things that were wrong with Clarence Thomas.
Well, he's talking out loud now. Seems like he's the senior.
He's talking loud, like James Brown said. He's saying nothing.
Yeah, but no, he's saying something.
No, he's saying something that's detrimental to us as people.
That's right.
And it's detrimental to the country.
Yes.
And the folks on the far right, they're just laughing.
Right.
They were able to put him in that position to have the devastating kind of impact across the board. My point being, and I've spent too much time on it, it's going to soon be a time when the courts are going to be closed if some of this foolishness doesn't stop. And we're blessed. The fact now that President Biden has nominated the first African American woman to sit on the Delaware Supreme Court to be a justice on the Third Circuit, and she's young, and that'll be beneficial because that's a lifetime appointment. But we're still going to have great difficulty in going through the courts because at the end of the day, the ultimate authority in the United States of America is the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah. Well, I just believe that God, when He's ready to move, He will move. And he will do certain things. And right now, with this whole abortions right and being denied Roe versus Wade, it's a lot going on. And we're going when we come back.
I laughed when folks got on TV and said, well, now they're overturned Brown, now they're overturned Plessy, and I laughed because they already have, for the reasons I just said that I didn't take The Delaware case of the United States Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly why Hillary Clinton was able to say when she lost to Trump, and she was absolutely correct, the schools in America now are more segregated now
right.
than they were in the 60s. And that's a result of Uncle Clarence and that 5-4 vote, which went across the country.
Absolutely.
There are no more deseg orders in place. The person who came through here and worked with the state to get the court order lifted left here, went to Little Rock, and he ran around the country destroying, stopping school desegregation orders. And they can go ahead and overturn Brown now, and they can overturn Plessy because they're already overturned.
Yeah.
The spirit and intention is overturned.
Yeah. Well, when we come back, we're going to just make a comment on this whole Roe versus Wade being overturned, and we'll be right back. And we're back. Well, a couple of people have asked me, as a pastor of a church and as a person who is in the Christian faith, what is my position on this Roe versus Wade decision that was made by the Supreme Court? And I'm going to be very honest with all of you, because I think it's only important that when reporting the news, when giving the news, that you can give your honest opinion. And whether you please everybody, that doesn't bother me too much. But what does bother me is when people live in a democracy and take the rights from someone else. Now, when Jesus was going through, he did not live as an autocrat and tell people, you better get saved, you better get sanctified, you better get filled with the Holy Ghost. He offered it. And whosoever would receive, those individuals had the right to receive, because he made it. As a matter of fact, if you look in the book of John, to as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God. And you may say, well, Pastor Kerry, what does that got to do with abortion? I don't want us to get stuck on the title abortion. We should not. I don't believe in abortion personally. Let's just put that out there so you can be clear. I don't believe in abortion. I do not. However, I believe that women have a right to control their bodies. I believe men have a right to control their bodies. So the whole decision to take away a woman's right, I felt was wrong, because even Jesus himself doesn't. You have a right to sin, or you have a right to live sinless. There's penalties for whatever we do. If we decide to live sinless, then the after effect of judgment is that heaven belongs to you. If we decide we're going to sin and do what we want to do and be contrary to God, then there's an alternative called hell. So that's what we believe in our faith. So I don't want people to say, well, if you're a Christian, you should be happy that they overturned Roe versus Wade. No, I am not in that position. I believe a woman has a right to choose, just like I believe a man has a right to choose. So when we are talking about these issues, it becomes important that you understand people have rights. Listen, I don't want to wear my seatbelt, but if I get caught not wearing it, I'm getting a fine. So how do we say you have to wear your seatbelt, but I don't have no decision in it? But then when it comes down to a person deciding what they want to do with their bodies, you're saying, well, no, we're going to tell them they can't do this, that, and the other. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fundamentally fair. I think people have a right to do what they do. As a pastor, I share the word of God with them. I share the word of God with everyone. And if by some chance they decide, hey, I'm going to reject what you say, that's their business and that's their right. We live in a democracy. And one of the penalties of living, or one of the prices we pay for living in a democracy, is that people have a right to live their lives free, as long as they are not going against the Constitution of the country or doing something that is opposing. I know you said you're going to stay out of it, but that's not how we roll. So you're going to have to tell me something. What do you think?
I don't know. What's good for the whole situation? I don't know. I'm going to leave it up to you, and the Lord. Hallelujah. Amen. I ain't getting in it.
See, this is what I got to deal with. I got to deal with this type of buffoonery when dealing with the tough issues. But honestly, there's no tough issue that Jay won't deal with, need to be. But I wanted to make sure I share that with you, because I think it's important that you understand, for those of you who are running around self-righteous and you're damning everybody who does anything wrong, but you forget that you sin too. That when the woman, and I'm sorry I don't preach like street, but when the woman was found in the act of adultery, pay attention, it was the woman, but she had to be in adultery with some men, but the men weren't brought. But when the woman was found in the act of adultery, Jesus knew that she was guilty. But what did he do? He wrote on the ground and said to them, he who without sin cast the first stone. When he looked up, all of them were gone. Probably some of them had slept with her. The reality of it is this: we have a right to do what we do. There's penalties and prices that we pay. So I want to make sure, don't send me no letters and emails telling me I'm not a real pastor, I'm not a real preacher, I'm not a real Christian. I am. I try to follow the heart of Jesus. I try to follow the grace and the mercy of God. And when God deals with us, he deals with us based on his grace and his mercy. So that's all I have to say on that issue. And I want to make sure you were very clear that I'm not telling you I believe that you should, an abortion, I'm going to go tell my wife to have an abortion. That's not where I am. Where I am is you have a right. Your right is your right. You do what you do. I pray that you always follow the things of God. But if you don't, that's your call. We'll be right back.
Most things in life aren't simple, and that includes abortion. It's personal. It can be complicated. And for many people, it's not a black and white issue. So why do people try to label it like it is? Pro-choice? Pro-life? The truth is, these labels limit the conversation and simply don't reflect how people actually feel about abortion. A majority of Americans believe abortion should remain safe and legal. Many just don't use the words pro-choice. They don't necessarily identify as pro-life either. Truth is, they just don't want to be labeled. What they want is for a woman to have access to safe and legal abortion if and when she needs it. But when it comes to abortion, who decides? Her congressman? Her governor? Her president? Women don't turn to politicians for advice about mammograms, prenatal care, or cancer treatments, and they shouldn't. Politicians don't belong in a woman's personal medical decisions about her pregnancy. When it comes down to it, we just don't know a woman's specific situation. We're not in her shoes. Ultimately, decisions about whether to choose adoption, end a pregnancy, or raise a child must be left to a woman, her family, and her faith, with the counsel of her doctor or healthcare provider. So the next time you talk about abortion, don't let the labels box you in. Have a different conversation. A conversation that doesn't divide you, but is based on mutual respect and empathy. To learn more, go to notinhershoes.org.
And we're back. Well, this is the Street Heat Corner, and before you get started, I just want to know, we were interacting this early part of the week, and you were hot. I mean, you were so hot, I could have fried 3 eggs on your head behind what was going on with the Riverfront Development Corporation, how they were filing for tax exempt, and then you start cooling down a little bit. But why were you so hot?
Well, I was hot. I was just outraged that legislation was being put forward to make the Riverfront Development Corporation tax exempt. Mm-hmm. What I did not know at the time was they were already exempt. Uh-huh. They had been exempt since at least 2003 and had been given the tax exemption up until this year when they applied. They acquired additional property and applied for tax exempt status for the additional property, and that was denied. I didn't know any of that. I assumed, based on the information that was in the street, mm-hmm. and what had been brought to my attention, that, for example, the assessment of property in the Christina School District mm-hmm. would give the district $384,000. I'm like, how are y'all going to take mm-hmm. money from the Christina School District, right. especially since that's the district, in my opinion, in the state that needs money the most because right. of its dismal record, especially within the city schools within the district. So I was warm and hot about it, and then I was still burning Tuesday. I'm like, how are you just going to take money from these kids? And then I found out that the district had never received any money. Right. Tax money in the first place. Subsequently, due to your research, when I had raised a question in public at the end of a finance meeting at a county council, do they have a 990?
Okay.
Are they tax exempt? How does the state do this? Well, you sent me a link, I think 8:30 at night, and you sent me their 990, and they were declared tax exempt 501c3 in December of 2021. So just like Easy and Mount Fair, Easy and Fair has a 501c3. Hilltop Lutheran Neighborhood Center has a 501c3. And the Riverfront Development Corporation has a 501c3. So,
but
basically, in our conversation, it was crystal clear to me that I got shut up.
Yeah, and can I just say to all of you who are watching, especially the politicians who say that we always just go after people and we don't do our research, we do. We do. All three of us do our research. We make sure that we understand what's going on. And if we feel that once we do some research on something that maybe another one of our partners here may have gotten that information, we make sure they get them so they understand that side of the story. And you were very receptive. You were shocked when certain things came about. But there was something that I'm not sure about yet still. Because you said in 2003 they became 501c3. I'm not sure if that's true.
They weren't 501c3.
Right, you said that earlier.
According to the 9,
right,
they were given a tax exemption by the law department of Newcastle County in 2003.
That's right.
The 990 says they obtained the 501c3 in December of 2021.
Good question. See, when with me, so you understand, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a preacher, but then I have a bigger question. Right, and that's why they pulled that legislation. It's unconstitutional. We won't get there.
That's not why it's unconstitutional.
Because, well, you can answer that, and then I'll come back to my question.
Okay, the fact of the matter is, the legislation would have enabled the state to make the Riverfront Development Corporation tax exempt. For those who put forward the legislation, and I don't know whose idea it was
we know
why.
whose names on it.
No, but okay, separate and apart from the sponsors. Sponsors have lawyers in the House and the General Assembly who craft the legislation. And all I know is the Delaware Constitution gives authority to the counties, the counties in the levy court, to exempt properties from tax for public use as the counties deem appropriate. It does not give the authority to exempt properties from taxation by the state. So therefore the legislation, after we talked and you informed me about the 501c3 and the 990, okay, this is done. Then I look at the Constitution at the advice of counsel, and I'm like, oh no, this legislation is unconstitutional. So where that leaves the Riverfront Development Corporation now, I don't know.
Yeah, well, they will be able to be happy. But let me just...
They're not, they can't be happy because the legislation was pulled. It's not going forward. It's unconstitutional. So I don't know what their other options may be. But given the power and influence of the board of directors, people from you've got elected officials, the mayor, the Secretary of State, I doubt if this is over.
Yeah, well, if it's a legitimate, which it is, 501c3, can't nobody really stop that. It's a federal thing. But I'm not even going to go there. But it's just, you work for the county, and I'm looking down on y'all folks right now, because nowhere in the world they would dare come and fight this.
Let's be real clear.
Okay.
That was given by the law department of the county in 2003. I didn't run for office until 2004.
Okay. Well, let me say this to you.
Second, our process is it never comes. We have tax exempt requests given to the county all the time. One council member in particular pays close attention to them, but they never come to us for approval. Our process is that the law department, the application goes to the law department. The law department denies or grants, and that's the end of it.
Oh. Well, I got a fundamental question, and this has to be answered. while you were angry and hot.
I was mad about $384,000 for the school.
Right. And now I want to join in and say, okay, we got all the rest of that stuff cleared up. They ain't never paid it. Okay. If they did not get certified.
They paid it. They've never paid it.
Right, I'm saying that. But if they have never been 501c3 certified up until 2021, what happened since 2003?
2003 didn't have to pay taxes because the county law department exempted them from taxes, which is within the legal parameters of the law and in the broad-based authority of the county through its law department.
I wonder who was the county exec at that time. 2003.
My man. Tom Gordon.
Okay. All right. We really have to make sure that we paying attention to our legislation because they got freedom to do what they want to do, and also
but for great public use. Look at the assets of and all the things that have been done on the riverfront.
Yeah.
You know, we've got two cities now.
Yeah.
One on the river
and
one north of Lancaster Avenue. They built another city.
Yeah,
and they're continuing to do so.
Yeah, but
they're expanding east, and then I bet you they'll expand south. And
no, they're going to expand south.
No, they're going to expand south.
Not as long as I'm over here. Watch.
They're going to expand.
Watch.
They're going to expand east, and they can go south. They can go south of South Bridge.
Okay. Well,
and
they go around it.
And they're going to expand north.
Yeah, that's true.
You're missing the whole point of what I said.
Yeah.
As you change that dynamic and you mix eminent domain and gentrification in, you change the political landscape.
Yeah.
In the long term, the long-term plan is that Wilmington will no longer be a majority-minority city, and you take away purposely and intentionally the majority-minority voting base.
Well, if you look at how many people are in the city of Wilmington now as opposed to 5 years ago, you see that it is shrinking. I don't know if y'all pay attention to that. And I don't know how much y'all pay attention to what's going on. Look at the data of 10 years ago.
But this is not rocket science work. In 2004,
okay,
my council district basically gave me half the city and from 13 out to Minquadale and from on the Route 9 side out to right past Garfield Park. Now I go almost all the way to Newcastle.
Yeah.
And on the other side, on Route 13, I go all the way to 141. My district had to be expanded out because of the increase in population and making so everybody had 45,000 people. And if you split the city with 70,000 people between two council people, me and Councilman Hollins, that gives us 35. Where the other 10 come from?
We are losing people. When they sent a lot of folks to Newark from the right here at the whether it be either one Riverside or from over here in South Bridge, they're doing this on purpose, and their strategic hand is moving. We keep going back to it because I want people to get this.
You look around the corner, and you had square blocks of public housing that are now solar panels.
Oh, you mean over there? Yes, when you come off of 495.
Okay.
Yes,
those are square blocks of public housing.
They were right.
You look in Riverside, and we tore down square blocks of public housing, and then you look at however many vacant properties we have. If the property's vacant, there are no residents. It's a major challenge.
Well, over here in Southbridge, same thing.
But there's no conversation about that.
Right.
And unfortunately, to Mayor Williams' credit, when he was mayor in 2016, the city applied for and got a scholarship to go spend several days, I think almost a week, to be trained in regard to how to deal with vacant properties in municipalities. And they had a plan that came back which included city members of city council, and with the exception of Penrose, who was on that part of that training, other folks didn't get reelected. And whatever happened to those plans, I don't know they have to be whatever happened with what they learned. It's going in the wastebasket now. But that was a better way of trying to deal with the vacant property situation as opposed to eminent domain.
Yeah, well, no, you don't want to deal with property to help poor and minorities. You want to get rid of them. So any plan.
But it's not just poor. It's minorities. Period.
Yeah. Well.
Okay. And you know, you be middle income and get priced out of your community.
Yeah. And that's going to happen if we don't
You
start
get
stepping
priced
up.
out, and you can get taxed out.
I like that. See, and a lot of people don't pay attention to that. Well, my house is paid for.
You can get
but
priced
you can get
out
and taxed
you
out.
can get taxed out.
Yeah, yeah. Because for the few people who own their properties straight out, they forgot that there's tax hikes constantly happening, and people can tax you out of your house. I just don't understand why people are not getting this. I really don't. And it's not that they don't care, but I think they trust the wrong people too much because they don't get it. This is everything we talked about today have led from this whole eminent domain.
There is a trust in people that a lot of people think are intelligent. There's a trust in people who a lot of people think are honest and people of integrity. And there's this expectation that certain people, certain leaders are going to make things right on their very own. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. That's just not the case at all. There's some people that fit into that category, but regrettably, there are some people who don't fit into it at all.
Yeah,
into those categories.
But whatever happened to verifying people when people tell you they're going to do something? When people say this is going to happen, like this whole thing with the riverfront. I'm not a riverfront, the port. I remember all the conversation of the 5,000 new jobs that was coming to the city of Wilmington, and we have not seen it. Why are we not holding people accountable?
Malcolm would say, "You've been hoodwinked. You've been bamboozled."
Yeah.
Donald Trump would say, "It's a hoax."
It's a hoax.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I'm saying today, all the above. Okay?
Yeah.
But the question is, are we just going to sit here and complain about it on TV?
Or
Or are we going to stand up as a community, as a people, as a city, and do something about it as a state? How can you continue to pour millions of dollars into the hands of somebody you leased the port to, expect them to open another port, and they haven't done anything that they said they're going to do that was purported to the general public, starting around the corner at Palmer School?
Yeah. Well, one of the
and your clothes. See, my lawyers was tied up. Just like you talked about civil rights lawyers. Okay, at some point you run out of lawyers. Had lawyers. All the lawyers that I had that I like working with are still tied to the education funding lawsuit. I couldn't turn around and ask them to take on Christina, but any other situation, if I didn't have the education funding lawsuit, oh hell no. I would not have allowed Christina to close Palmer because the Neighborhood School Act is the Neighborhood School Act. How can Southbridge be the only community, not the only community, okay? How can you say everybody can go to the schools closest to their home and then close the only school in Southbridge? How can you have Colonial School District that has no school in the city continue to have children in Riverside spend 13 years 13 years of their 13 years of public school education out in the county, going all the way to kids who go. Some of them go and attend Eastside Academy, but there's still a couple hundred that go all the way to Newcastle every day. Now they ride past Bancroft, they ride past Stubbs, they can't go over to Harlan, and they go all the way out to Newcastle Elementary. But, you know, as you talked earlier about, if we're going to have civil rights lawyers, we have to get them from elsewhere because we're limited because you got all these black lawyers and none of them want to do civil rights law. It's all about making money.
Yeah, and you don't make a lot of money in that one. Well, you could, but that ain't the whole goal. Is you got to have a heart for people.
But see, when I accepted posthumous reward posthumous award from the Black Barristers for the late Irving Morris, I told them, in certain terms, he's living proof of the fact he was in the school desegregation litigation for 40 years, working with Lenny. He proved that you could make money and do civil rights law too, because the fact of the matter is, he sued Columbia Gas. They settled for $100 million. He came back from New York with the lawyer's fee check in his pocket because they agreed to that as settlement. And you know what the math is on $100 million.
Yeah, I do.
Excuses. Everybody's suffering from excuse-itis. I can't make any money. No, you don't want to do the work. And you got all this training, and it's sad to me because those of us who graduated from college, especially prestigious colleges, and gone on to law school and have benefited so immensely from the struggle, are just not giving back.
Yeah, and that's a constant problem for me. It flies
in the face of Du Bois's theory, which I believe is still relevant, of the talented tenth.
But I changed that language when I was in college. I wrote on that whole talented tenth theory, and I changed the language. I'm nobody, but I changed the language from the talented tenth to the fortunate tenth, because at the end of the day, it was some who were much smarter than I who did not make it to college. I was fortunate to get there.
Well,
you were fortunate to get there.
No, but see, my father, when I was in junior high school, my father's a mailman. And my father was told that I wasn't college material because of my behavior. Now, they were right about my behavior. But my father was strong enough to look at the guidance counselor in the face. You're sitting there as living proof that any damn fool can go to college. Now, my son is going to Wilmington High, and he's going in the academic program. That's the end of it.
Yeah.
But my boys, I got in trouble with, and the ones we got suspended together with, they didn't have that. They didn't have somebody to stand up like them. And most of them were just as smart, if not smarter than me.
Right, that's what I was saying.
And used to help me with my homework, but they didn't get that. And people wonder why I fell into doing what I've done as a student advocate for 47 years now.
Yeah.
It's because I am simply giving back what my father and mother one gave to me, and what Hicks Anderson is another, because in my case it took more than a supportive family. Community people came into school. When I got caught in the bathroom with some money on the floor and something looked like dice running around, Hicks Anderson once said, "Oh hell no, you're not gonna put him out of school. I didn't come up here to put children out in the street like that fool over there in Jersey. And if you try to do that, I'm gonna teach him how to burn the school down." And the principal looks at, "Just hold on, Hicks. Just hold on. Just hold on." Everybody didn't get that.
Right, but and I know, because I was even diagnosed as having dyslexia, and I wasn't supposed to make it past the 8th grade, and I have 5 earned, well really 6 now, 6 earned degrees, and I think that, but I had people behind me pushing, saying, give him a chance, let it happen. That's why I'm so far in debt to Lincoln University, because the people I became in contact with, a person like Frank T. Coleman, who was a member of Omega Psi Phi, who said, boy, you're smarter than anything, and you don't let people stop you. But that's why I say we owe the community a service. They taught that to me at Lincoln. They taught that to me and that's why even when I opened up for Southbridge, I don't live in Southbridge, but I'm not gonna let people mistreat Southbridge, even though some of the residents in this city, in this little section of the city, they some of them don't like me, and it's all right. Because I've come to the conclusion a lot of times it's based out of ignorance and it's based out of other people's opinion of me. But I fight hard. I provide all the services I can provide because it was done for me. Not because I want to talk about it and say, woe is me, but because this is who I am. A poor kid from the projects made it, but he didn't make it on his own. It was people providing services that were for free, that cared about the community, that caused me to be able to be successful today. And that's why I'm never going to stop. So we just got to be very careful not to discount the fact that we are no longer in the hood. And when you talk about there's not that many civil rights attorneys or black attorneys who want to work in this area, I'm always enraged when I hear that, because there's too much this community has done.
Look at the harsh reality. Look at the harsh reality. See, you trying to make me mad and it worked. Okay, why did Judge Williams look at me as a layperson and never taking a law course and say, you're going to be the one. You're going to be the one to work on this education litigation. You're going to be the one to sit at council table. You're going at council table with the lawyers and make decisions. And I said, Judge, why I got to do that? I'm not a lawyer. And then he looked at me and said, we're planning for the future, and we see you as a major part of that future. And then Hicks Anderson jumped up, stood up over top of me, and said, such and such up and do what the such and such you're told. But why they picked me? There were lawyers in town, lawyers in his office they didn't pick. Something wrong with that picture. It was something wrong with that picture in 1981 when they imposed that on me, and there's something wrong with it 40 years later.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what's wrong with it. What's wrong with it is that you listen, though. That's what's wrong with it. Now nobody's listening. Nobody's interested. And then the few people who are interested, they don't have the fight. If Kobe was here in his corner, and I really appreciate what he brings to our show as we get ready to close out our show today. I really appreciate what he brings to our show because, and I often tease him by being a liberal because he's a real liberal. And I'm more conservative, but I am a Democrat. But the reality of it is he brings that heart of, you know what, there's yet hope. There's yet hope. Young people, and you always give the compliments of thank God for Kobe and the fight and the young lady we had on last week.
If Kobe and Cheyenne,
yeah,
okay, had not been on top, not done their research, not done their homework, I wouldn't even have known about the legislation.
That's what I'm trying to say.
It wasn't a matter of public record. They brought it out.
But they couldn't be public record when they rushed it through the committee and didn't even make it a public issue. It can't be. They rushed that thing through, and they caught it because he got his eyes on it, and that's why I'm grateful.
I'm on my way to Dover yesterday, almost there, to basically tell them this legislation you have for the Riverfront Development Corporation is unconstitutional. Kobe texted me and said they're pulling the legislation because it's unconstitutional.
Yeah, I saw the text message. I was on that text with him when he did that, and I started laughing. But that shows you his heart and what he does, and that's why I'm grateful. And I hear you always giving those young people credit. You don't have any jealousy.
And we don't always have to agree.
Oh, that's right. Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
They have their point of view, and I ducked and dodged the issue you talked about earlier. But on the one hand, nobody aborted me.
Amen. On
the other hand, you got all these fools running around saying no this, no that. You're going to make people have children and won't do anything to help the children once they get here.
And that's my biggest argument.
Them because of the way they look.
Yeah.
Because of the color of their skin. But you're going to make somebody, and if somebody, if a woman is in a situation where she could literally die because she has to have this child, you gonna let her die? Well, I mean, these fools are flat out crazy when it comes to something.
And they hide behind religion to do it. That's why, as the pastor, I decided to make my statement. We're gonna have to cut it today, and we didn't get a chance to talk anything about a lot of other things, but we really wanted to spend a lot of time today, Brother Street, talking about eminent domain because this is serious, and it's getting serious.
But hear me and hear me well.
Okay.
We won the round.
The round, not the race.
The fight ain't over.
No, nowhere near over. Nowhere, because even though he pulled it. And they sent him out there. I felt so bad for what's his name, Chuku or whatever, the brother who's the representative. I felt bad for him because they sent him out there and he tried to answer every question he could, and they were beating him up crazy because the few that did show up showed up with might and said, "We're not playing this."
There's been great criticism of him in his response, but at least he had
Yes!
guts enough.
That's what I'm saying.
To show up
Yes.
and say what his position was.
Right. And I'm glad he has
whether you agree with it or not. Now, I certainly don't agree with it, and I certainly don't trust this administration. But he didn't go play hide and go seek.
Absolutely. And then after he heard the community too, this is what I didn't like about State Representative Potter. After he heard the community and he said, okay, y'all not getting it, or maybe my position is not the position it should be, he pulled the legislation. That's the way it's supposed, that's the way democracy is supposed to work. That's the way representatives supposed to work. Because he could have just kept pushing it. Now it probably would have failed with enough pressure, but the point is he pulled it.
There was beautification in that because the city elected officials joined forces and said, he didn't say I'm pulling it. They said we're pulling it.
Well, but he had to be a part of that. But I agree.
No, but where I saw beauty was in the joint statement.
Okay.
Because that
yes.
sent a message.
Okay. Well, you got all fired up at the end of the show. We ain't got any more time, so I apologize that you want to get fired up at the end. When Kobe come back next week, we'll see how fired up you get or something else happen. But thank you so much, Brother Street. Is there anything else you want to share for the good of the day with the next 30 seconds?
No, I want to wish everybody a great 4th of July. Tomorrow, hope everybody's enjoying the weekend and a happy summer.
Oh, good. Thank you. And I want to say to everyone, thank you so very much. Please pay attention to this eminent domain. It's on my spirit. It's in my head. It's everywhere, all over me. It's overtaking me because I do not want to see our people basically stripped of everything that they have. Pay attention to this eminent domain. Pay attention to all the legislations that are going forward and start showing up to ask the questions and do not be silenced. Until the next time we get together, this is Dr. Curry.
This is Jay Street.
See ya.